Think for yourself. Question authority.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now we have a pretty big video to talk about here with Nintendo working again with AMD, and we have to talk about the Wii U situation as well. So before we get started though, please hit the like button for me if you do enjoy this. It really helps out, and we will get started. Now Nintendo, of course, chose Nvidia to work with for the Nintendo Switch, but we know that they did work with AMD for quite a long time, dating back to the GameCube era, to the Wii and Wii U. But now it looks like we pretty much have confirmation that Nintendo is in fact working again with AMD on the Nintendo Switch, and we're going to talk about what this could mean for their future as well for next generation. However, it was discovered through data mining and through the Nintendo Switch Sports app that Nintendo is in fact working with AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution to be used in Nintendo Switch games in their development of these games in their software. And this was discovered by a couple online data miners you may have heard of, Oatmeal Dome and NW Player, which have found what appears to be that Nintendo is in fact using AMD's FSR. And interestingly enough, we talked about this just back in October, how it made a lot more sense, at least to me, that Nintendo would use FSR and not DLSS due to the ease of implementation of it into their software for their development kits, not only for the current Switch, but also for the next gen Switch as well. But take a look at what I talked about there in regards to that, because it was connected to a patent that people assumed that Nintendo was working for DLSS, but it doesn't look like that was the case. Take a look at this as a reminder. They can actually use AMD's Super Resolution that works on Nvidia cards. It works on any card actually. That's not older than a 970. Maybe easier to use that than DLSS. It doesn't take any extra overhead. What a lot of people don't understand is that it's easier technically on developers to use FSR than it is DLSS. The reason why that patent also confirms that Nintendo wasn't even using or working with DLSS in the first place is because DLSS is already a patented technology by Nvidia. Why would they need to be patenting their own custom AI upscaling if they're already just going to be using Nvidia's DLSS, right? Wouldn't make any sense. So that pretty much confirmed it right there. Nintendo wasn't working with DLSS. They were trying to use something customized on their own. Most likely they wouldn't have to pay Nvidia the licensing and all the money involved with paying to use DLSS on each and every game for a next generation Switch. Now you have FSR coming out, and even FSR 2.0, which AMD promises to be even better quality and better performance to be used in games and all different GPUs than FSR 1.0, which is what they just released a few months ago. So them making it public right now, that patent, doesn't really mean they're working with that same technology right now for this next generation Switch. What it could mean though is that they're done with that. They're not going to use it anymore, and just maybe they're going to adopt something from AMD like FSR to use in their next gen Switch because it's extremely easy and they can simply implement it on every dev kit or every software development kit, SDK. But it was also brought out by Oatmeal Dome on Twitter through his data mining that Nintendo's AGL, which is basically their core graphics libraries that they use to make their Nintendo Switch games and their software, in fact uses FSR for Nintendo Switch Sports, and their core graphics libraries is what they use to make games like Splatoon, Breath of the Wild, and other first-party games as well. So Nintendo putting the implementation of FSR into one of their own core graphics libraries is very telling. But what is really interesting is that Nintendo could have used Nvidia's own NIS, which is their recently released in the end of 2021 Nvidia image scaling, which works very similar to FSR in the upscaling of the image. It makes it look very close to the native output that they're trying to render at. The only difference is that for NIS, it does this for the entire image, including the UI, not just the graphics of a game like FSR does. So what FSR does along with DLSS is that it actually upscales the graphics themselves, and the UI, for example, stays native resolution. So that's the difference, because it's handled during development. With NIS, it's handled after the fact, and it pretty much runs on all games that use Nvidia's GPU technology from the last few years. But even though the UI is the only difference, the image quality itself, including the UI with NIS, isn't that much different from FSR. So it's interesting that Nintendo chose to use FSR, which is AMD's open source technology for software developers, making their games look better in higher resolutions. But as we brought out previously, AMD is working on FSR 2.0, which will improve the quality of their performance modes and ultra performance modes, which looks really, really bad on FSR 1.0 versus DLSS, for example. So if Nintendo's going to adopt AMD's FSR right now, that means they're going to also be ready to have their FSR 2.0, which will come out later in 2022, and that'll make their games look even better using their performance modes, which means that they can run games at lower resolutions and still have them output looking higher quality at higher resolutions on your TV. That's exactly the issue that Nintendo Switch has had, and going into next gen, this is a very, very big thing that's going to be used by these companies, especially for mobile devices. It's something Nintendo was patenting, working on back in 2020, which they stopped working on, like we brought out in that last video. So it doesn't look like Nintendo may be actually going for DLSS at all, as the rumors kept repeating and repeating for the last couple of years. It looks like they have decided to use FSR instead, because it looks really good. Basically, it looks almost as good as DLSS in quality mode, and it's very easy to implement in games, easier than DLSS. So that's something very interesting to look for, and I'm very curious to see if we'll be talking more about AMD going forward in 2022. We'll have to wait and see though. And Nintendo themselves, of course, hasn't admitted or confirmed this outright publicly, but since it was found, and it's basically said right there on the game itself in the file that they're using AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution in Nintendo Switch Sports, that pretty much confirms it that they're going to be using this going forward to help their games look better in higher resolution displays. So it's very, very exciting. But again, we have to be very clear that for the next gen Switch, we have to remember that FSR works for any type of GPU. It can work for Nvidia, it can work for AMD, of course, and it can work for Intel and even other types of GPUs. It can work for any GPU that exists, as long as it's modern enough, you know, as far as back as Maxwell is concerned. Since Maxwell, I think, is where FSR can run on with the Switch, obviously, but that's as far back as it goes, according to AMD at least. I think there might be some programming they could do for even older GPUs, but we have yet to see that happen. So this is very exciting for Nintendo, and it's exactly what we've been talking about for them to progress moving forward. For a mobile device to look better on 4K displays, they're going to need something that can upscale the image. And even though DLSS is getting better and better in its quality, it's not necessarily an automatic thing that developers are putting in their games for each and every game that they make. So for FSR though, it's a lot easier to implement, and Nintendo could theoretically simply just put it in their graphics API in their development kits and have it be something that they can implement for every single game going forward, either on Nintendo Switch and of course the next gen Switch, especially AMD's FSR 2.0, which I'm very curious to see how good looks versus DLS 2.23, for example. But as always, we'll keep our eye on very close to Nintendo's relationship with these companies going forward and see which way they may go. It's going to probably heat up pretty soon. All right, now some sadder news. Nintendo is going to end the Wii U and Nintendo 3DS eShops by March of 2023. And that means you will no longer be able to buy the Wii U games on the Virtual Console, Wii U games in general, or the 3DS games. But we're going to talk about more so the Wii U here as kind of like an ode to the Wii U, because the Wii U, a lot of you guys started following me back in 2015 when I started doing those Xenoblade Chronicles X tutorial videos, for example. It got a lot of attention on the channel, was very, very successful. That was even before I was doing the NX, really. So that was really a big memory for the channel, a very special. The Wii U was a very special console for me. I had a lot of fun with it with my friends and family. I didn't experience the problems really that with the console that other people had. I hoped it sold better, of course. I was always wishing it sold more so other people could enjoy it and appreciate it like I was appreciating it. But I never had a struggle or problem with the Wii U itself. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. I thought it was a great system, and really it's sad to see this happen because game preservation is an issue going forward with Nintendo games, and a lot of people have resorted to piracy with Nintendo games because they can't get their games basically on their consoles anymore because Nintendo's just not offering them to buy. So the Wii U is going to be ending all those things in March 2023. So basically, as an ode to the Wii U, I want to leave you guys with this montage video and some music there, kind of as a nostalgic reminder of the Wii U. Thanks guys, and we'll see you soon.
Just make me aware.